I've described how to package up everything you need to know about a request using a custom class that I named Request Package. It contains fields for the URI, the method, and the parameters. And now I'll describe a way of integrating this into an Android app. I'm working in a version of the project called getparams, which picks up where the last project left off. And I'll start in the main activity class. First, I'm going to modify the async task that defines my asynchronous work. Previously, I was passing in just a string as the parameter because I only needed to worry about the URI. But now I'm going to modify my async task definition so that it looks for a request package, my custom class. I'll change the generic declaration, and then I'll also change it in the doInBackground method. As I make each change, notice I'll see a new error, because right now my chain of calls all are expecting a simple string. Next, I need to modify my HTTP Manager class's getData method. It currently expects just a simple string. I'll change its parameter to also look for request package. I'll name it simply P for package. And then I'll add a line of code here where I create a string that I name URI, and I'll get its value by calling p.getURI. And that puts that code all back together. Now, the getData method is getting the entire package, and it's getting the URI from the package. But there's another bit of information in the package that you should use as well. That's the request method. I'll place the cursor down here after I've created my connection object, and I'll call con.setRequestMethod, and I'll pass in p.getMethod. So this is the value get, or post, or something else. And I'm finished with the HTTP Manager class for the moment. Now I'll come back to my main activity. I'll go back up to my requestData method up here, where I'm creating and executing my task. Notice I have an error here because I'm still working with a simple string. So I need to package up the URI and all the information about my request. I'll create an instance of my request package class. I'll name it P for package, and I'll instantiate it with the noArguments constructor. Next, I'll set the method. And for this example, I'll use a method of get. Now that line of code is a little redundant because you might remember in the request package class that the method's default value is already get. But it's a good thing to put this in anyway, just to document the nature of the call that you're making. Next, I'll take that URI that's being passed in, that's the target of the request, and I'll pass it into the package with setURI. Now I'm ready to set parameters. Remember, I had created this method named setParam that lets me pass in a key and a value, both as strings. The keys should always be all lowercase and should never have any spaces in them. But the strings can be any sort of string because they're being encoded automatically when we set the parameter by the package itself. So I'll pass in a literal string of value 1. And then I'll duplicate that line of code a few times. And I'll change the keys to param 2, 3, and 4, and I'll change the values to 2, 3, and 4. And finally, I'll execute the task by passing in the package. So now I've packaged up everything about my request, the method, the URI, and the parameters. I'm creating my asynchronous task and executing it. Within the async task in doInBackground, I'm calling my static method getData and passing the package along. In the getData method, I have my URI that I got from the package and my method that I got from the package. But now I also need to append the parameters. And I'll do that right here. I'll use a condition here because I only want to append those parameters if I'm doing a GET request. If I'm doing any other kind of request, I'll need to use the parameters in a different way. So I'll ask the question, if p.getMethod.equals, and I'll look for a value of get. And if that's true, I'll append a question mark, and then I'll append the encoded parameters. And now my URI consists of the address of the PHP page on the server plus the encoded parameters. And I'm ready to test. I'll save my changes. I'll take a look at my problems view to make sure I don't have anything to clean up. And I'll run the app in the emulator. And right now, when I click the action bar item, I'm still getting my JSON content, and that's because I didn't change the root URI I'm sending the request to. So I'll go back to my main activity and search for JSON. And I'll change the address of the page I'm sending the request to restful.php in the root folder of the server. I'll save and run the code one more time. I'll click the action bar item, and there's the response from the server. It's correctly showing that I'm making a GET request and that I've passed in 4 parameters. You can now test this with all sorts of values. For example, you might eliminate a parameter and change some of these names. I'll pass in a name and a price. And I'll run the app and click the action bar item, and there's the result. Again, a complete round trip to the server where I'm successfully passing in parameters. So that's how you can use your packaged request with a GET request. Simply append the encoded parameters to your URI, separated with the question mark, and then pass the whole thing in. Now, not all web services expect GET requests. Some expect POST, PUT, and DELETE requests. And I'll show you how to handle those situations in the next movie.